Hello, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Here's what we're looking at. Wright College is the latest location proposed to house migrants. We're live as a community meeting gets underway.
An investigation finds Catholic clergy members sexually abused nearly 2,000 children in Illinois. Details from a new report.
The U.S. Treasury warns of a default as lawmakers negotiate the debt ceiling. Senator Durbin on the status of those negotiations and much more.
And we tour Argon Laboratory to hear about its $815 million upgrade.
But first, our top story tonight. The city's racing against the clock to house thousands of migrants arriving from the Texas border. The latest location city officials have their eyes set on is Wright College on the northwest side.
The alderman of that ward is hosting a community meeting tonight and says he's hoping for a peaceful conversation. That's where we find reporter Joanna Hernandez with more. Joanna.
Now that's right. Nicholas Pesaro says he wants to know more about the city's plans before asylum seekers move into the college. Now that's a similar message many community leaders across the city have echoed as the city struggles to find permanent solution for the influx of migrants arriving to the city. Alderman Pesaro says he found out 12 days ago by an anonymous caller that the city has plans to use parts of Wright College in the northwest side's Dundee neighborhood as a respite center, a temporary location where 400 asylum seekers will have a place to rest, take a shower, and receive a hot meal as the city works to find shelter for them.
So I started making some phone calls. I called OEMC. You know, the mayor's office was in transition at that time. Found out finally on Tuesday that, yes, last Tuesday actually, that they were doing this and they wanted to do it, which means they're going to do it. And I said, well, we're not going to do it unless we have a community meeting.
This morning, the city says there are currently 784 asylum seekers sleeping on the floors of police stations across the city. We visited the 16th Police District on Milwaukee Avenue, where more than 30 adults and children are staying. 28-year-old Jonathan Monestario arrived in Chicago a week ago from Venezuela, where he says he worked as a police officer. Now he's hoping to get the opportunity to work and be able to provide for his wife and child back in his home country.
Ya se acabó el viaje, este es el destino final y aquí hace una vida por lo menos de 5, 10 años. No hay nada más que me mantenga. Que si uno recibe una ayudita, ok, uno la acepta, pero no para que durarme 8 meses, 6 meses metido en un refugio, no, yo duro 2 meses, hago mi platica y me voy.
As of now, we know the city plans to use Wright College beginning June 1st up until August as an alternative center for migrants to stay instead of police stations. For months, city officials have been turning buildings, parks, and hotels into temporary shelters, decisions that many communities have mixed feelings about. We spoke to people living near Wright College for their reactions ahead of tonight's community meeting.
As humans, we should help everyone in need. Like, we need to build that sense of community. We need to allow ourselves to help others. I think that's the best way for us as a species to move forward.
I would say that's not the way they should come in the first place, but they're here. So I think you do the best you can. The restaurants don't have enough waitresses. They don't have enough. Oh my goodness, let them cook. Let them go to work.
And it can be a long legal process before migrants can even receive a work permit, time that Alderman Pesaro says the city doesn't have, as even more asylum seekers are expected to arrive to the city.
If you're letting them in, why are you not allowing them to work? These are not criminals. These are people that want to work and make a better life for their family. They don't want to sit in a police station or in a gym at a college. They want to work. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to go out and find work on their own. They're not going to pay taxes. They're going to get taken advantage of by some unscrupulous contractors or business owners. So therefore, the feds are the ones that need to step up.
As for what happens after August when students and staff are expected to return to school, well, that's a question and answer that people here hope to get answered in tonight's meeting. Now, the meeting will be held inside the theater inside Wright College as a big crowd is expected to be there. We also know Alderman Pesaro has asked people to not bring in signs inside the meeting, hoping for a peaceful conversation. Live outside Wright College, I'm Joanna Hernandez. I send it back to you.
Joanna, thanks very much. And now to some more of today's top stories. Chicago health officials are sounding the alarm. This time it's because of Mpox, formerly known as monkeypox, the virus that can cause painful lesions. The Chicago Department of Public Health says it has documented 29 cases between April 22nd and today. This after only recording 5 cases for the first 3 months of the year. Chicago saw an outbreak of Mpox last July that led to 3 deaths and 6 dozen hospitalizations.
Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart is calling on federal lawmakers to do more to curb carjacking.
The majority of these cars are not being taken for joyrides. They're being used because they can be used in another crime and it's not connected to that person. These are very well organized crews that are doing this, very methodical in how they do it, so that if we then cut part of that off for them, that they can't use this one thing anymore, they'll have to stop or try to come up with something else.
The sheriff says Congress should follow Illinois' lead in requiring automakers to create a faster way for police and victims to locate a hijacked vehicle. He applauded the state's recently passed legislation requiring car makers to create a 24/7 hotline to provide tracking information after a carjacking. Dart says Cook County's reported carjackings in 2022 were up 24% from the year 2020.
Environmental advocates want the state to put the brakes on plans to expand the perennially choked I-55 expressway. Environmental groups join lawmakers urging some of their colleagues to reject proposed legislation to expand the highway, saying it'll contribute more pollution to the air and impact south and southwest side communities that already face environmental hazards. The plan would add 2 lanes in each direction. Opponents say it would circumvent regulatory hurdles and take needed investment away from other transportation options.
The most successful route to reducing congestion is to provide people with alternatives, including safe, reliable, and frequent public transit.
Former University of Chicago president and Chancellor Emeritus Robert Zimmer has died. Zimmer served as the university's president for 15 years before transitioning to the role of chancellor in 2021 after a surgery to remove a malignant brain tumor. He's credited with expanding educational access and financial support for students, as well as developing the university's first engineering program and enlarging the school's global presence with centers in Beijing, Delhi, and Hong Kong. Zimmer was 75 years old.
Certainly a big loss there for the U of C community. And coming up in the program, we sit down with Senator Durbin to talk about the debt ceiling, Chicago's migrant crisis, and the DNC.
But first, a disturbing report on sex abuse in the Catholic Church across Illinois. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
More than 450 Catholic clergy members abused nearly 2,000 children across Illinois. That's according to a multi-year investigation by the Illinois Attorney General's office, which released its findings in a 700-page report today.
It is my sincere hope that this report will shine light on those who violated their positions of power and trust to abuse innocent children, and on the men in church leadership who covered up that abuse.
WTTW News reporter Matt Masterson joins us now with more. Matt, Attorney General Raoul says this was a multi-year investigation. Tell us more about when it started and what it found.
Yeah, so this dates back to 2018. It began under Raoul's predecessor, then Attorney General Lisa Madigan, and it culminated in this report which found that 451 Catholic clerics and religious brothers had sexually abused some 1,997 children across 6 Illinois dioceses, including, of course, here in Chicago. This occurred over the course of decades, dating back to 1950, and of that total of 451 abusers, it's well above what the dioceses had themselves reported of about 103. That's what was publicly said prior to this report.
Pretty big difference. Does A.G. Raoul believe the dioceses lied to the public?
Survivors of this abuse have said that, yes, they lied. They believe that the church has lied to protect these abusers for as long as this abuse has been going on. Raoul himself didn't go quite that far to say that they lied, but he did point to that discrepancy between the 451 abusers identified today and the 103 identified previously, and said that the numbers there sort of speak for themselves about the honesty of the churches there.
Cardinal Blaise Cupich of the Chicago Archdiocese released a video statement. Take a look at what he says.
The fact that some who wore the Roman collar egregiously violated their vows and the trust of their people by abusing God's little ones is not only repugnant, but painful for me and my brothers in the priesthood.
Matt, what does Cupich have to say about this discrepancy in the reported numbers?
He's maintained that the Archdiocese reported all claims and allegations of child sexual abuse that have been brought to its attention. While Cupich noted that this report does include a list far greater than its own list, it said that some of those names weren't included in the diocese list because those allegations came from Raul's office, and Raul never explained to them where those allegations were coming from or how they were actually substantiated. So he claimed some of those names were new and unexplained to church leaders before today.
You also spoke with the head of Chicago's SNAP chapter. That's, of course, a survivors network of those abused by priests. What did he have to say about this report?
Larry Antonson, he himself is a survivor of child sex abuse at the hand of a priest. And he said he was thrilled that this report came out. He believes, unfortunately, though, that the numbers of both the survivors and the abusers listed here is a massive undercount. He told me he hopes this investigation and spurs other AGs and other states to follow suit, release reports like this of their own. And while this report did include recommendations to improve transparency, to improve survivor care and investigations within the church, he doesn't believe that there's going to be massive changes within the church until abusers and the people who help protect them face real consequences.
Certainly a disturbing report. Matt Masterson, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Matt's full story on our website, WTTW.com/news. Up next, one-on-one with Senator Dick Durbin.
The clock is ticking on the debt ceiling crisis, and Chicago's social safety net is stretched thin with more migrants arriving every day, as you just heard. And joining us to talk about all that and much more is Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, who serves as the Senate Majority Whip and chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. A lot of things to get to, Senator, and we thank you for being here. Just days away, as we mentioned, from a possible U.S. debt default, which could send the economy into a tailspin. Are you seeing the contours of any debt ceiling deal between the president and House Republicans?
I reached out to Senator Schumer this afternoon and asked the very same question. He's in the room where this is taking place. Still differences, important differences. Conversation continues. I'm hopeful, but we want to see the result announced soon.
What kind of deal might you accept in the Senate?
Well, I don't want to, at this point, toss in the cards and say, here's what I'm going to consider. I know what's going to happen. They're going to give me a proposal which I don't like, and I'm going to be forced to either vote for it or to watch something terrible happen to the economy. I have to do the responsible thing.
Are there spending cuts that Republicans are proposing that might be non-starters here?
Well, one I would put on the table, you don't hear very often, is a 25% cut in medical research by the National Institutes of Health. We have some breakthrough research projects going on in the city of Chicago and state of Illinois. Just one announced at Northwestern 2 or 3 weeks ago that I went over to meet with the researcher. It was so impressive. That's the kind of thing that cutting back on makes no sense whatsoever. Every family lives in dread that they would get the kind of diagnosis that Ted Kennedy, John McCain, Robert Zimmer faced with the brain cancer. This research addresses that directly. Cutting back on it makes no sense.
So cancer research helped and aided in some way by funding from the National Institutes of Health, which is, as you mentioned, on the chopping block here in the Republicans' plans. I want to move over to the issue with the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. As chair of Senate Judiciary Committee, you've asked Harlan Crow to come in and answer questions, or to answer written questions. He's the billionaire conservative donor that lavished the justice with trips and real estate transactions and gifts that the justice never reported. Crow's attorneys said, nope, we're not answering your questions. What's your next move?
Well, their response was, it's none of your business. This is the Supreme Court decision, and they think he's doing just fine. I don't think Justice Clarence Thomas is doing fine, nor do I think the Roberts Court is enjoying any vote of confidence by the American people. And that's why we think we have a responsibility in Congress, in the Judiciary Committee, to press forward for a code of ethics in the Supreme Court. Here's the radical idea we're pushing. The justices on the Supreme Court ought to be treated the same way as every other federal judge in America. They think they're a special class, and I don't know why. And I think what they've suffered as a result, their reputation has been damaged
In terms of Mr. Crow or even Justice Thomas, might you move to compel them to appear before the committee or to answer questions, either via subpoena or some other method?
Everything's on the table as far as I'm concerned.
And in terms of ethics rules, are you talking about legislation that Congress would pass? I mean, it would have to pass on a bipartisan basis that would then impose those ethics rules on the court?
Yes. The ethics advisory law that we passed in 1978 is one that the Supreme Court loosely follows. A bill that we passed just last year, at the end of the year, a bipartisan bill that said disclose stock holdings if there's a conflict with the case before you. They embraced that as well. So now they're arguing it's none of our business, but they've lived by those standards because it just makes sense.
And we should mention a lot of this comes from a ProPublica investigation. Have you seen any facts that compel you to want to refer any of this to the DOJ for further investigation?
It's interesting how that goes. The Chief Justice refers all the evidence over to the Judicial Council. The Judicial Council decides if there's a reasonable cause to believe that there's a violation and then reports it to the Department of Justice for further investigation and prosecution. So that's the process. It's a reasonable process. The question is why it's not being followed as it should be followed in this case. One
of the longtime members of your committee, California Senator Dianne Feinstein, a lot made right now of the slim majorities that you have in the Senate, the fact that she's been away for health issues. Do you see her as being capable to carry out her duties on that committee and as a senator right now?
She just returned. I told her last Thursday, I need you as chairman of the Judiciary Committee to be there for critical votes, and she was there. She asked for recognition and gave a statement off the cuff. I'm sitting right next to her. I can see what's happening. She did just fine. So I don't doubt the fact that she's been through some serious medical issues, but I want her to be treated fairly. She has a remarkable career, and I want her and her family to make the decision that's best for her.
All right, let's talk about what we just saw on this program a little earlier, the migrant issue. The mayor, the former mayor, the current mayor, saying the city is at capacity with its shelters. City, county, state money being spent to sort of deal with the issue. Is there any federal help on the way?
There was help, but it's not nearly enough. $4.3 million to the state and to the city for this purpose. They need $60 million, they say. I want to make sure that we bring the resources in so these people can be treated humanely. I want their experience in the United States to reflect well on us as a nation. Remember, they have cleared border surveillance and examination of their backgrounds, and they are here in legal status awaiting a hearing on whether they'll be granted asylum status. I want their experience in the United States to reflect well on us as Americans.
$60 million, do you think it's realistic to expect that amount or somewhere close to that amount to come from the federal government?
It's possible. We've had about 8,000 of these migrants sent to us by Governor Abbott of Texas. In New York, I understand it's closer to 50 or 60,000 that they're facing. So other communities see that challenge, and I think they'll join us in this effort.
What about the issues that were brought up there with work requirements? The aldermen saying, well, why can't we just put them to work? They want to work.
Paris, when I talk to these people, and I've spoken to them right off the bus as to what they expect, not a single one has said to me, where do I go to the government office and get my check? Everyone has said to me, where can I go to work? And the fact of the matter is, our laws say they've got to wait 6 months to a year before they can work. Why? Why in the world is that the case? Because otherwise we would create a magnetic effect of people who say, if I can just get across the border and get a job, I'll be fine, thank you. We're trying to make sure that the law is realistic. But we've got to do something about this work requirement. They're going to go to work. They've got to feed their families. And they could be exploited, as the alderman mentioned. We've got to find a happy medium here that serves that purpose.
Right, that's a very realistic possibility there, that they'll be working, being paid under the table, not contributing taxes or anything like that, and perhaps being exploited. You know, a few weeks ago, there were a lot of troublemakers in the Loop. They were harassing people and vandalizing property. You, of course, want the city to put its best foot forward for 2024 and hosting the DNC. Are you worried about the city getting crime under control for that event?
Yes, I am concerned. I'll be very honest. And some of my fellow Democrats said, you shouldn't be saying those things publicly. I think it reflects how people feel in the city of Chicago. They want a safer city. They want to see a convention. They want the people who come here to be safe and to be impressed by the city. We have a new mayor, a new approach. I've told him I'll help him in any way that I can. I don't know what he's going to do, but I hope that he's moving in the right direction.
Speaking of that new mayor, you very publicly came out to support his opponent, Paul Vallis. A lot of high-profile Democrats, like the governor, kind of sat out this race. You did endorse. Are you getting grief from progressives in your party for that?
Not really. And I went directly to the new mayor and told him, regardless of the campaign, I want to help you. And he said, the campaign's over now, let's govern together. I think that's the right approach. Paul Vallis and I worked together 40 years ago. I've known him for that long. And that's one of the reasons I did endorse him, but that's yesterday. Today we want to work with current Mayor Brandon Johnson to make sure that there is leadership the city needs.
Certainly a lot of things that you need to work with the mayor on, and this is a question possibly for the future. Your term is up in 2026. Is this your last term, or are you thinking about another one?
You know, I've got 3 years plus to go in a term. That's a long time. I'll make the right decision at the right time.
All right, Senator Durbin, no doubt a lot of issues on your plate and the city's plate and the state's plate in that interim, and we thank you for being here.
Thanks, Pierce.
And up next, a multi-million-dollar upgrade for Argon. We share the details right after a look at the weather.
Coverage of science and technology on Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Joel M. Friedman, president of the Alvin H. Baum Family Fund.
Imagine an X-ray beam 1 billion times brighter than a dental X-ray. Well, scientists at Argon National Laboratory don't have to imagine. Using such X-rays is already a part of their reality. The machine that creates those X-rays is a huge particle accelerator called the Advanced Photon Source. It was used during the COVID-19 pandemic to probe the structure of the virus at a molecular level. That, in turn, enabled companies to accelerate the development of treatments. But now, after 28 years, the APS is going offline to get an $815 million upgrade. Chicago Tonight producer Paul Kane stopped by to meet the folks making it happen.
The APS is the Advanced Photon Source, and a photon is an X-ray. It's a particle of light. And what we generate here that can't be done anyplace else is produce X-rays in a way that we can probe at the molecular and atomic level. And so we can understand what's going on in a protein molecule, or what's going on in a crystal of metal or ceramic, or some of our studies look at what happens in chemical reactions in batteries. The X-rays we use here are generated in a storage ring, which is an electron storage ring. And by replacing everything, the power supplies, the magnets, all the components, all 5,000-ish large components, we can produce a new machine that will increase the brightness of the machine a factor of 100, increases the properties of the photons, the X-rays that we generate, such that we can probe in 3 dimensions, not just 2 dimensions like we do now. We live in a 3-dimensional world. And so being able to probe in those 3 dimensions, generate the data, and then combine it with the supercomputer on the other side of site gives Argon a capability between these 2 machines to do real-time research with a response time on days where previously we wouldn't even do the experiment because it took too long. Beyond that, it becomes, again, an exploration machine. We don't quite know where we go, but the capabilities are off the charts relative to where they are now. The electron storage ring is being completely taken out. It's the equivalent of 2 miles worth of semi-trailers of equipment, which is going to be installed here. We want to align the critical components in those semi-trailers to the width of a human hair, all the way around.
This is the core of the new storage ring that's being used for the APS. It's got a lot of magnets that are actually steering an electron beam. And basically, as you move electrons around, they generate X-rays. And so all this is made to make very bright beams and very coherent beams, and that's what we're going to utilize for our research. Currently, the amount of X-rays we have in terms of brilliance is about 1 billion times more than a dental X-ray. With the upgrade, we're going to go to about 1 trillion times more. Now, what does that give you? It gives you unprecedented space and time resolution. So we can see things that are very small, and we can see things very fast.
All of this equipment will be installed by the end of this calendar year, so December of 2023. Once things are installed, there's test and checkout, then we have to commission the storage ring itself, and then also integrate it with the other accelerators that currently exist on site, get all of that commissioned. That's planned to end around April of 2024, and after that, then we start bringing up the beam lines. I love doing puzzles, I like challenges. This has been one of the biggest challenges of my career, and I'm grateful to be given the opportunity to actually make the project successful.
This will open a whole new world. We're not sure exactly what we're going to see on day one. We have a lot of first experiments that people are planning. We have users throughout the world who are waiting to use this facility, so it's all very exciting.
And the Department of Energy is funding that $815 million upgrade for the Advanced Photon Source.
That's our show for this Tuesday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing and get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. New Mayor Brandon Johnson is set to preside over his first City Council meeting. Our Spotlight Politics team on that and more.
That will certainly be eventful, and we go in between the threads for a detailed look at a rug tufting class in Bridgeport. All right, now for all of us here at Chicago, very useful here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz.
And I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to recognize its 18 attorneys selected for the 2023 Super Lawyers List.